Now, for Shabbos, it's quite heavy going.
Yeah,
I always used to feel bad because I was after them. It's like a borrowed system, this system, Yomi split. I always want that to be what I want. Basti, you're late. I'm waiting for you.
Oh, good.
Now, for Shabbos, it's quite heavy going.
Yeah,
I always used to feel bad.
on YouTube. Then I watch it. Keep it there and I watch it.
I just explore by the things they offer. Always offer you certain things.
Oh, good.
What are they offering you today?
Pop singers, Trump.
Now, for Shabbos, it's quite heavy going.
Yeah,
I always used to feel bad.
then I watch it. Keep it there and I watch it.
It's scary to see yourself like
YouTube star.
Oh, you had a
That-
haircut.
How many videos have you got up?
Chas v'shalom, chas
How many
v'shalom.
videos have you got up?
You can do yourself. No one knows.
That's right.
Self haircut.
So, well, for some reason, when we were young, we used to about having a fight with a lawnmower or something.
My father was very worried. He said this, that, and he carried the knife and we said, well, what's Eruv? Was there no Eruv in Yerushalayim and they had to really sticks about
I assume that we're talking about people that,
your foot?
yes.
Because otherwise he's right. I mean,
I thought you can't come because
Oh, I mean, Shai's case, we talk about the old city of Yerushalayim, people living outside Yerushalayim, coming into Yerushalayim.
that's not Tchum. Not coming over the
Oh, there's no problem with Tchum, no.
How big was the area in Old Mitzay? Was it the size of Yerushalayim now or bigger?
It was the old city of Yerushalayim, smaller than the old city of Yerushalayim, so very small. Good evening, Yehuda, how are you? You're listening, you okay?
From Robertson from the freezer.
What is this? Very sweet, thank you very much.
I need another contracted head.
Have you got enough for everybody? No, that's very good. What I didn't decide is that Allah is about to check it.
Yes, but I'm not checking about checking on the process thing first.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, how are you, Moshe? Yeah, we have. We're almost finished. We're waiting. You're coming late.
You're fair, like say Baba.
You gave each other.
Are you allowed to?
Bubble.
Bubble.
Yeah, well.
I had a haircut, yes.
You gave yourself.
Had a very strange thing today. The NHS randomly chose me to have a test for corona. No, not for corona, antibodies. NHS.
Oh, because you've been tested.
My wife was desperate. No, never done a test. I've never done a similar test. My wife was desperate to go instead of me.
How have they chosen you? It could be a spam.
No.
Tested through the NHS, how do they know?
No, they sent me a whole testing kit and everything else. I came around with the testing kit, picked my finger, which was painful enough. No, it was proper NHS. No, it was online, no business.
It didn't say
Do
money.
you know what? I've
No,
figured out the cure for COVID.
What?
I decided this
Yeah,
week Sunday, I don't go on the
Oshi,
news
Polly,
website.
why do you
I don't
need
go
that
on
for
the
your
radio.
mission?
And life, honestly, life is so much less stressful.
Why do you feel for COVID?
Do you have antibiotics?
For COVID, but honestly, I
I tell you what happened.
everyone's
Okay, it's getting off the show, but basically the idea is you're supposed to check it, give you a kit and everything else. You're supposed to check it between 10 minutes and a quarter of an hour. I checked after 5 minutes, I lost patience.
That's what?
I went to learn. They picked me up the thing. I checked after 20 minutes and there was. There was.
Not long ago, you got it in Mark right in the beginning as well.
Yeah. And they said they've got two kinds, and I've got a better kind of antibodies, one which lasts longer. I've got the test of tombstone. No, they said it's not individually accurate, but now they want me to go online to take a photo of it and upload it to the NHS thing.
That's why they make you take money there.
No, it's a proper thing. They sent me a letter like a month ago that do I agree to take part in it, and a long list of things.
Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, today we have a lighter Gemara on the whole first 3 quarters, but then it gets harder. But it's a very, very interesting Gemara. It's mamish chaval to do some of it. It's a mamish chaval. Our mission discussed the question if Pesach is a Shabbos like this year, and we need to know that Allah will come, and and we have a question what to do. What's the halacha, Moshe? You learned it yesterday. Erev Pesach this year. What will you do on Shabbos?
Coming, obviously. So
Right. Can you clean it? Can you
Yeah.
clean the sheep?
I've been inclined to say no.
Part of it.
Or
You
machloek.
can't rinse it, you can clean it.
Part of it.
Squeeze
Part of
intestines,
it.
not rinse.
Oh, somebody listens. You can squeeze the intestines, you can't rinse it. Why? Why can you squeeze and not rinse? Right.
It ruins.
Very good.
That's good for them.
Are you allowed to cut off a wart with your teeth?
No.
Yes.
Say no.
No.
Say no.
We paskin not, but Belezer paskins yes.
Okay.
No, but you have to remember the halachas. If it's got a wart in your Korban Pesach, you wake up in Erev Pesach, or Shabbos morning, Erev Pesach, and it's got a massive wart. You can't use it. Can you pull it off with your teeth? According to the Chum, you can't. According to Belezer, you can. Which issa would be to pull it off with your teeth? Goy says, would it be issa deraisa or issa derabanan? Issa derabanan. So you see that even for derabanan, rather you have to go and look for another Korban Pesach. Can you imagine how busy you'll be? You'd have to look for another Korban Pesach rather than whether to do this as Rabbanon. It says more Tunu Rabbanon. It's Samachvavam Dalef just after Mishnah. Allah has this Amar B'nei Besev. B'nei Besev were the Nasi in Klal. The Nasi in Klal was the most important position. It was far, far more powerful than being a prime minister or president. You were the Nasi. What? A Nasi was much greater. A Nasi was much greater.
Is that not what it is?
And they once, it is, that's the translation, but we see from the places it was a very powerful position. Once the 14th was on Shabbos. They did not know if Pesach was Teiches Shabbos or not. That's the question. Can the Shchitas Pesach be Teiches Shabbos? The Yerushalmi asks the question, nothing less than the Yerushalmi. How could they have forgotten? The Yerushalmi says on average once every 13 years, Pesach is a Shabbos. So all you need to do is be 13 years, 25 years old, and you'll remember. The Yerushalmi says that Shmuel arranged it in order that Hillel should become the Nasi. There's a kasha which the Pesachim ask, and now get a bit complicated, but it's an interesting question, and there's no easy answer. It's a very hard question. The answers that are the most strangest answer. The year that Kaisel bought the Korban Pesach, the second year, was 2 weeks after they built the Beis Hamikdash, the Mishkan. The Mishkan was which day of the year was the Mishkan first used? Which day of the year? What day of the week was it, do you know? Not Shabbos. Sunday. The Gemara tells me I had it actually. Asora Torah. There were 10 special things about that Sunday. What were the 10 special things about that Sunday? First time the Kohen did avoid the first time the fire came down was the first day of creation. If the first day of this one was a Sunday, then what happened was Friday was the 14th. And if that's the case, the question is, why in the world does Bnei Yisrael not know? The Torah says they bought Korban Pesach on Shabbos, and the Mefarshim get very disturbed. I can tell you some of the answers, you won't like them. And they thought maybe Ketanim did it, or maybe they did it B'Shinu. It's a very good question. Myself, they did not know what to do about Pesach, which is the Shabbos. Almost, they said, is there anybody who knows are you allowed to be Korban Pesach on Shabbos or not? There's one person, Hillel came. Anybody know what was very special about Hillel? On the roof, but I was looking for his patience, even more than patience, humility. Humility. He was humble, very, very humble. You're right, on the roof. That he sat even on the roof to listen to G'dol Shrav Talmud. He knows. They called him do you know? There's only one Korban Pesach. We have the Korban Pesach more than 200 times a year. How can that possibly be? Every Shabbos, how many Shabbos are there in a year? At least 50. Every Shabbos you bring 2 Korbanos Musaf, 2 sheep, plus 2 Olastomik. That's 4 sheep for every Shabbos. Times 50 weeks is 200. That means 200 times a year we're Mechalel Shabbos to bring a Korban. So if we're Mechalel Shabbos being a Korban 200 times a year, of course we're Mechalel Shabbos being a Korban Pesach. How do you know all of this? Nema moyadu b'Pesach, but nema moyadu b'Tomid. Ma moyadu b'Tomid doiches Shabbos, just like the word moyadu pushes away Shabbos, ach moyadu b'Pesach doiches Shabbos. So he made the Gzeh Shabbat. The more later we'll discuss it more great. The basic idea is it says moyadu b'Komon Tomid and it pushes away Shabbos. It says moyadu b'Komon Pesach pushes away Shabbos. Void kavachimu, it's a kavachimu. There's no chorus by Korban Tamid. Nevertheless, pushes away Shabbos. Pesach shonush chorus. Einay din sheduches Shabbos. Miyad hoishivu b'roish uminu nosi aleya. They resigned and they made Hillel into the nosi. I used to go to Shiur every Monday for Bell Wine. I don't know what your opinions of him. Oh, he's a very, very good speaker. And he once spoke about this, and the impression it made. Can you imagine such a thing? You have one halachic shayla, you don't know the answer. And one person comes up and he tells you the answer. So you resign your job and you give it to him. Never, says, in the history of the world has ever such a thing happened. And it shows the tremendous dedication to the truth that the Nisim of Klal Yisrael had, that rather than say, make up an answer, they could have made up an answer. They could have said, okay, you know, there's some things you know, some things we know. Rather, they realized, they recognized that he was a greater person, and they resigned. In fact, more recently, I saw, the Yerushalmi says there were 3 people that gave up a position of power for somebody else. Does anybody want to guess? Anybody? Not so easy, actually. They never gave it up. Oh, very good. In that long story, Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah was appointed to Rosh Hashiva, was Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, and later they gave it back to Gamliel. So Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah resigned from Gamliel, and Yonasan, the son of Shaul, gave up the position of being king for David HaMelech. And the Yerushalmi says of all 3, but the Beseva over here is the greatest of all stories. Why? Yonasan knew that Shmuel had anointed David, so he had very less choice about it. Rabbi Elazar ben Azariah, when he was appointed, what happened was he was told it's going to be temporary. The only one, Bnei Beseva, with the proper Nisim, and they gave it up for Hillel. It's an unbelievable thing if you think about it. To give up your job for somebody just because you know that he's a greater person. It's very, very hard to fathom it. Well, he spent the entire day giving a drasha, the entire day. He started saying not nice things. He said to them, what made it that I should be the Nasi, not you? You are lazy. You never learned from Shmai V'Avtali like I did, and that's why I became the Nasi, not you. As before you mentioned. He was in Shmai V'Avtali were in Babel, I see, yes. This was in Eretz Yisrael. So he came from Babel to Eretz Yisrael.
But he's telling them they didn't or like Shmai V'Avtali.
No, they didn't go to Babel.
They didn't go to Babel.
Yes. You're pointing out a good thing. I'll say in a minute. Rashi asks the question, which probably puzzling most of you, is like this: that we just said a minute ago, that Hillel was renowned for what? For his humility. So why would you say such a thing to them? So he says a very interesting thing. In fact, Hillel was speaking from humility. He was saying, I'm in no way greater than you. In fact, you are greater than me. The only reason why I became the Nasi, not you, is because I had better Rebbes than you. And I listened to my Rebbes more than you. But not because I'm intrinsically better than you. It's a very interesting way he says like this. No, Rashi there says it's referring to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. No, Hillel spoke on behalf of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. If Hashem is here, everything is here. Again, I just happened to see that Gemara recently. The mice again. Hillel said to them that had you learned to Shmai V'Avtali, you would have been a Nasi. It's not because I'm better than you. I happen to have a better leader than you. What's the word for it? Oh, so he asks, if that's the case, we'll see later that Hillel was punished for this. He asks, why was he punished? Because the answer is, says, like what you were trying to say. So the Maisa, Bnei Beseva was stuck in Eretz Yisrael. They didn't have the option of going to Babel to learn from Shmai V'Avtali. So therefore, they wasn't that they could have had the option to learn from a better Rebbe. And therefore, inadvertently, he said a criticism which was unjustified. And that's why. The Gemara says, Omuloi Rebbe. They asked him, Hillel, Shochach v'loyehevi sakin the Shabbos ma. What happens if they did not bring a knife? Rebbe says like this. In the Beis HaMikdash, there were thousands of knives, as you can imagine. They needed knives all the time. But when it comes to Pesach, the amount of shechita that went on in very quick time, they needed more knives. Since they needed more knives, so what would happen if people forgot to bring before Shabbos from outside Yerushalayim a knife, what should they do? I heard it, what? Shemati v'shachachti, I heard it and I forgot it. That means he showed his humility. He didn't say that I don't know and think, I learned it, I forgot it. The next day, a few people are moichik the words Lamocha because of the Shash and others, because the Gemara earlier says it was Erev Shabbos. Chol was Shabbos. It was Mashma was already on that day. They say miyad. That's the Shabbos says. Miyad mishat pischoi tle. Anybody who had a sheep. Sheep is very hairy, it's woolly. Toichu with some way would stick the knife in the wool. Mishat pischoi gedi. Somebody that has a goat. Toichu ben krona would stick it between his horns. What ma'asav of this halacha? What ma'akach mekublani pishmai v'avtalion? That's what Shmai v'avtalion said. That if you run out of knives, you can stick it in the animal, and more later we'll discuss the halachic issues of different malachas involved in doing that. But that's what they did. Oh, mama, nema moyadu bepesach, v'nema moyadu betomit. Ma moyadu yomu betomit doiches haShabbos, ach moyadu bepesach doiches Shabbos. Just like when it says moyadu bekomon tomit, and we know that komon tomit is doiches Shabbos. So too, it says moyadu bekomon Pesach, we know that komon Pesach is doiches Shabbos. How do we know that common Tomid is Doiches Shabbos? Maybe you only been in the common Tomid 6 days a week, not 7 days a week. If you say the word b'moyado itself, the meaning of the word b'moyado means b'moyado at its time meaning at its fixed time, regardless of whether it's Shabbos. If that's the explanation of the word b'moyado, then why do you have to have Gzera Shova? Pesach also says moyado, so they don't need to Gzera Shova. It's mashma the word moyado itself doesn't teach it to you, because if it did, you wouldn't need to make Gzera Shova for Tomit Pesach. Hello, moyado le mashma le. The word moyado doesn't mean anything, it doesn't prove it. Achadavi moyado le mashma le. Olamako ola Shabbos b'Shabbato al olas atomid. The pasuk says, bring the common Shabbos, besides for the olas atomid. The Torah says, bring the Korban Shabbos besides the Korban Tomid. Is the vaya that besides for every Shabbos you would bring the Korban Tomid. So therefore we see that the Korban Tomid is Doiches Shabbos, and we see that Korban Pesach we learn from Gzera Shova. So Maisa, if somebody would ask you, Korban Pesach Doiches Shabbos or not, what would you say?
Some of it.
The Ekka Shchita is. How do you know that? What would you answer? Oh, Gzera Shova. And he said the Kavachima. Now, one of them is superfluous. You don't need both, right? Usually, you only have one drasha to learn one thing. And here, Hill came up with two drashas. Moyadu Gzera Shova. And the Kavachima, what was the Kavachima? Kavachima is if already Tomid is Doiches Shabbos and Tomid is not Kol, it's Kavachima Pesach. My word Kavachima. Ma Tomid shouldn't go Doiches Shabbos, shouldn't go Doiches Shabbos. It's more Ikele Mifrach. Male Tomid can Todive Kolil. Tomid is more powerful. Why? It's greater because it's every single day. And all of it goes in this Beach. By shaking the common Pesach, only part of it goes in this Beach. First, he said to them, they asked him this question. So they said to them, the Gzera Shova. Says, if Hillel already knew the Gzera Shova, why did he start up with the Kavachim? And they then said to him, your Kavachim is no good. Why is Kavachim no good? Because Common Tomid is more powerful than Pesach. Why? Because Common Tomid is constant and also it's Kolil. So why did he say that? Just tell them the Gzera Shova. Elo. He was saying to them like this. He was trying to ask them. We have a principle that a person can never learn Gzera Shova unless he heard it from his Rebbe. So therefore, I can understand that you don't know the Gzera Shova. Why didn't you at least know it from the Kavachima? That means Hillel originally knew the Gzera Shova, and in fact, he didn't need the Kavachima. What he was puzzled was, why were they asking him? Why didn't they just straight away work the Kavachima out themselves? So he answered this, and they said to him, the Kavachima is no good. Says the Kavachima is no good, so therefore he told them the Gzera Shova. Omama, the mocha mishapischei tele. Anybody who had a sheep, somewhere would stick it in the wall. It says some based off of the page. You're using avodah bekodshim, which you're not allowed to. As we once mentioned, I don't know if we talked about it once, how much you have to pay. If you make your cow into a shlomim, are you allowed to lean on your cow? No. You're not allowed to. It's meila. You're not allowed to. You're not allowed to lean on it. You're not allowed to sit on it. You're not allowed to make it do anything. So how can you make your sheep work for you to carry the knife? Answers look, the Tanya Omulav Yomov Leimoal Odom Be'elosoi. Nobody ever was ever over the Issa Me'ila on the Hillel's Kabbonos. How could he do that? How could he make sure Hillel that nobody should ever do an Aveva with his Kabbonos? How? He would bring it while it was still a Chulin, or Makdisha, once it was in the Beis HaMikdash, then he was Makdish it, and immediately he would do Shchita and Smicha at the same time. Meaning like this. In order to make sure that nobody should be ever over Me'il on his Kabbalas, what did Hillel do? He was only Magdish it when he brought it to the Beis HaMikdash. So therefore, the Gemara could ask that in a second, very good. But the Gemara says like this, these people did not want the Korban Pesach to be Kaddish originally. If you take a sheep to your house and you're watching it all the time, there's a chat to make sure it's got a mum, no got a mum, etc. Because even though they didn't have tied to the bed, there was a din to make sure it's got no mum. So this, you leave it in your garden, your children might play with it, might sit on it, etc. You might be over on the Elah. So what they did was, they were only in Makdish it when they came to the Beis HaMikdash. If they only Makdish when they came to the Beis HaMikdash, so therefore there was no problem sticking a knife in it. Why? Because there's no problem of carrying, because the sheep is not Kadosh. Pesach b'Shabbos echid motzi makdish. How can you makdish on Shabbos? So tani makdishin. Not allowed to makdish v'marich. Not allowed to make an erech evaluation v'nachvimin. Not allowed to put things into cheva v'makbin tumo ma'asos. Kalelu b'yom tov makav b'Shabbos. You're not allowed to yom tov b'Shabbos. Why not? It's all exeo to mekach or memka. If you do it, you might come to do it for. You might come to do buying and selling. Answers the Gemara. Anim b'lechav b'shenik k'volim zman. That's referring to korbanos when there's no fixed time. Why be makdish a sheep on Shabbos when you can wait till the next day and makdish it after Shabbos? Why makdish on Shabbos? Something which you have to do. So you are allowed to do. So now we asked one question: what about the avodah b'kodshim? The answer is there was no problem with avodah b'kodshim. Why not? It wasn't yet a korban until the Beis HaMikdash. Oh, how can you makdish it on Yom Tov? The Torah says you're allowed to be makdish if it's necessary for the actual day. You're doing another problem. You're not allowed to make your animal work on Shabbos. This is another problem. You're not allowed to make your animal work on Shabbos. It's awesome in Hatir to make your animal work on Shabbos. You're not allowed to make your animal pull a wagon. You have to let it rest. The answer is no. Mechama kelachayad. It's mechama with a shidduch. It's still also with Rabbanon. You're not allowed to do it with Rabbanon. And so, what about to do it kelachayat? That means the way Rashi and Tosfos explain is that it's a lighter D'Rabbanan. It's a D'Rabbanan which is unusual because it's a D'Rabbanan of Mechama, while you're doing it in a way that you have no choice, where you've got no choice because, no, you're doing what no choice because you've got a mitzvah. But on the other hand, it's Kelachayad, so it's a lighter D'Rabbanan because it's not a normal D'Rabbanan. Mai. Omalen alocha zu shomati v'shochachti. And you can rely on Klal Yisrael. So many of the Rishonim asked the question that, look at that, let's say it's a third from the bottom. If you remember, I started off by asking, are you allowed to bite off the wart of a sheep on Shabbos? What did we paskin? What did we paskin?
No.
Not allowed. Not allowed. Question is, what's that? It's Goizes Kelachayad. What's the difference between Goizes Kelachayad and the Chaber Kelachayad? So Tais says that the malacha which is done by an animal is less common than the malacha done by a person. Malacha done by an animal, by the way, there's no cause. Even if you do it, etc., it's only nothing. Malacha done by a person himself is cause. So therefore it comes out that you would be allowed to do a malacha on Shabbos b'shinu if it's only a mechama malacha. But malacha d'oraisa like goizes, etc., that is awesome. So Gemara carries on. After Sabbath Chavav with Beis, Omar Yehuda Marav, about a third of the way down. Omar Yehuda Marav, Kol HaMisyor arrogant. Im Chacham hu Chachmos Misalekes Mani. If he's got wisdom, he loses it. Im Novi hu Nevuos Misalekes Mani. Im Chacham hu Chachmos Misalekes Mani, who loses his Chachma Mehillah. Omar Ma Eschem Lekantum Bedvam. He started steching them. He started saying, so telling them off. V'kom alu halacha zu shemati v'shochachti. You see that he forgot the halacha. So the minute that person goes about guy, he forgets it. Yehuda explains that Torah is compared to water. One of the most powerful things that water has is it goes to the lowest point. As a person lifts himself up, so then the water falls away from him because water goes to the lowest point. If a person becomes arrogant, he loses Torah, so to speak. It drains away from him. And the Vu as well, that Shvoch was Masha Shchinosa at Har Sinai. Har Sinai was the lowest of all the mountains. If a person becomes arrogant, he loses Hashras HaShchina. Im Novi Univosim Isalekes, Mimenu Midevoyo, Tichsiv Chodlu Prozen Be Yisroel Chodenu. And what happened was that people were scared to live in open cities. What happened was the Beis was describing the terrible situation that existed till the time that she came along. That everybody was scared. It's actually this week's Haftarah. It's actually this week's Haftarah describes Shiras Devera. Somebody told me, who's here from Holland? You're from Holland, no? Somebody told me that in Holland they used to get all the children to learn this Shiur off by heart. Did you ever learn it by heart? Just come to the world. By heart, Shiur to heart. And what happened was, because of that, she forgot her nevuah. Uksiv Uri Devaya Uri Dabishi. He told it to me, Nochem Aaron's son. He lives on Granville. That his children, he used to live in Holland. His children all had to learn it. What? His father taught there.
No, he passed away.
You just wake up, Devaya. What's wake up? Wake up to remember your Torah, because to remember your nevuah. So he said, a terrible thing that if a person becomes Baal Gaiva, he loses his Torah, loses his nevuah. Anybody gets angry, if he's a wise person, he forgets his wisdom. If he's a Navi, he forgets his nevuah. They got annoyed with them. And what happened was, he got annoyed with them because they brought back all the girls when they went to fight against Midian. Was Moshe correct or incorrect for getting annoyed with them? Correct. He needed to get annoyed with them. They didn't have it. So he says, if they did the right thing with Shabbat, why would you forget his? He says that it is a metzius, it's a reality. It's not an oynosh. The minute that person gets angry, so what happens is he doesn't have the ability to be able to learn Torah. Even if it was necessary for him to get angry, it has damage. So he says, you see how powerful it is. And he says for next more as well, we'll see. What happened was they went to Midian, they fought, they brought back all the girls, Moshe got annoyed, and then he needed to teach them Halachas HaGolah. And who taught it to them? Elazar taught it to them, not Moshe. Why did Elazar teach them, not Moshe? Because Moshe forgot it. So we see that if a person's got chokhmah, he gets angry, he loses it. What happened was, there was a very big tzaddik called Yehoshaphat, who was the king of Chilek of Yehuda. It was a terrible, terrible Rasha called Yehoram, the son of Achav, who was the king of Malchi Yisrael. Yehoshaphat and Yehoram became partners, and because of that, Yehoshaphat suffered terribly, which from here we learn, by the way, that you shouldn't become a shutaf with a Rasha. Because Yehoshaphat was a very, very big tzaddik, by the way. Very, very big tzaddik. Huge tzaddik. But Maisa, he lost the battle. What happened was, when they went to partnership together, was to attack another country. So they came together and they asked Elisha for advice. And Elisha got annoyed. And he said, if not for the fact that Yehoshaphat is here, I won't even answer you, Yehoram, because he was so annoyed with Yehoram. He said, if not for the fact that I honor the face of Yehoshaphat, I won't even look at you, Yehoram, because I'm so annoyed. When he wanted to have nevuah, he wanted to have nevuah, what's going to happen at the end of this battle, and he had to have music to restore the nevuah. He lost his nevuah. Why did he lose his nevuah? Because he got angry. Anybody gets angry, even if he deserves greatness, he loses it. Here Shimshon Pinchas says a very, very fighting thing. More tell us, Eliyav was the oldest brother of David HaMelech. Eliyav got annoyed with David HaMelech. What happened was, David HaMelech's father was Yishai, and Yishai sent his sons to war, except for David, who was young, and he would send him back and forth with messages, go to the army front with messages, food for his brothers, and come back. So David would go back and forth from the battlefront back home. One of the times he went there, he killed Goliath, which was a big Yisroel for Klal Yisrael. But one of the times that he came, his brothers saw him, And his brother, not knowing that his father had sent him, said to him, I know why you came to the battlefront. Why did you come to the battlefront? Idle curiosity to see what's going on in the battlefront. So he got angry with him. Because he got angry with him, so he lost the position to become the Melech of Klal Yisrael. Now, Shishmikut points out, I saw actually others say it, but I heard it from him, that this story that he got annoyed happened after the story when David was chosen. So at the time that Hashem despised him, he hadn't yet got angry. The answer is that it lay deep down in his heart. And the fact is that he never got angry in his life, but he hadn't eradicated the ability, the chance that he might get angry. So therefore Hashem didn't want him to be king. Shenema, let's see inside. Shenema v'yicha af Eliyav v'David, you got no David v'Imah, lomo ze'iradet, why did you come down? V'amino tashemat atzoy dahinu b'mitbo. Why did you leave it? Who's looking after the sheep? You come here to the battlefront. Who's looking after the sheep? And your dad is the I know how bad you are. That you came because you wanted to see the war. Hashem says, I didn't choose this sort of belief. So don't look at his stature and his beauty. Me'astiu is always an expression that he once liked him and no longer. He liked him until now. So the fact that he liked him until now, but he despised him because of the thing. And again, Rabbi has got a lot to say on this. He says an interesting thing. He said that Eliyahu being king, then David would not have been king. So Bishlema, he says, I understand why Eliyahu deserved not to be king. Fair enough, he got angry. But now suddenly, David deserves to be king. If he didn't deserve to be king till now, Eliyahu being king, then David wouldn't have. So how suddenly did he deserve to become a king? Well, it happened. Says the answer is, who did Eliyahu get angry with? With David. And David did not respond in kind. So the minute that Eliyahu got angry with him and he did not respond in kind, then suddenly David became worthy of becoming king. And it's an interesting thing that you see that Eliyahu got angry with David, and thereby Eliyahu lost his entire position, and David then gained his position. It's very hard to imagine how dramatic it can be that so much can change on one act. But the next Gemara, we finished with that Galit, and now we're going back into the thick of Tumah V'Tara. But it's an easy Gemara if you keep track. It's very important. I'm going to say a tiny bit, introduction, tiny bit. There were three machnas in the Midbar. What were the three machnas? Machna Shechina, Machna Levi, Machna Yisroel. Machna Yisroel was anywhere within the Ananei covered. Machna Levi was Moshe Aaron around, and Machna Shechina was within the Mishkan. In the time of the Beis Hamikdash, Machna Yisroel is Yerushalayim, Machna Levi is Beis, and Machna Shechina is the Azor. Three levels. There are three main categories of Tumah. The worst in terms of being sent out the most camps is a Mitzvah. Mitzvah has sent out of all three. The next level up is a Zov, a Zova, Nida, Yoledes, Shechva Zera, Boil Nida, and all the rest. All of them have one thing in common, by the way, that the Tumah comes from a discharge. That's where the Tumah comes from, right? It's the way to remember it. Zov, a Zovo, Yoledes, even a Shechva Zera, a person has rich life. All of these is the next level of Tumah. And all of them are allowed in Machna Yisroel, but they're not allowed in Machna Levi. And then you've got Tumas Meis, where the Tumah of Tumas Meis and all the similar to Tumas Meis. For example, what's similar to Tumas Meis? Touching in the Vela, touching a Sheretz, very good. Such people are allowed everywhere except for Machna Shechina. So you've got three levels of Tumah. Tumah of Mitzvah, which is a unique Tumah. Tumah from discharges, which is the second level. And then Tumah of touching, we'll call it. Tumah that comes through touching. If you don't have this clear, the whole next Gemara will be a very big challenge. It's Mamash Chabah. Three levels of Tumah. And Tumas Meis is allowed everywhere except for Shechina. Tumas Zov and all the rest are allowed everywhere, only not allowed Machna Shechina, Machna Levi. But he's allowed Machna Yisroel. And Tumas Mitzvah is not allowed anywhere at all. I'm going to say a short word, which the Kleyoko writes, which is a very sadistic word. It's not necessarily always halachically correct, but it is a very nice word, and it helps you remember. Many times we say, where you're not allowed to say so and so. If you remember this word, the whole next Gemara is easier. It says like this. A mace, Tumas Mace. Has he done anything wrong? What's a Tumas Mace? He went to Levaya, he buried somebody, he's done nothing wrong at all. So he's allowed, of course, in Machne Yisrael, and of course he's allowed in Machne Neviah even. He's not allowed in Machne Shechina. Why is he not allowed in Machne Shechina? Because it says, if du es Hashem besimcha boyolafana v'ronana. When you come to a king, you have to show a certain amount of joy and enthusiasm and excitement. A person who's just been busy bearing something lacks that sense of joy. And therefore, there's nothing wrong with him at all. So therefore, he's allowed everywhere except for Machne Shechina. All the other tumas of discharge come, the Gemara tells us, in different places. From, let's say, eating too much. A person eats a very, very, very lot, you'll see zera. A person does too much bilas. Every time a person does beer, it becomes too much shechva zera. So in Machne Yisrael, of course, is allowed. He's not done anything wrong. He's not done any averos. He's not kaddish. You can't call him a kaddish if he's busy with his taivas and with his food. So he's not allowed in Machne Neviah, because Machne Neviah was the Shevet Levi, were the people that spent their lives thinking about how to serve Hashem. So he's not allowed in Machne Neviah, but Machne Yisrael is allowed. And Mitzvah creates machloikas. Him, we don't want even a Machne Yisrael either. So it's a very good way to remember. Tumas Meis has done nothing wrong. He just touched something, a shell, a dead shell. It's not done anything wrong. But the fact is, he's not in the elevated kedusha of being able to go and stand in front of Hashem. In Machne, you've got the Zov, led us all these people where they are busy with mundane, and therefore they're not allowed Machne Neviah, and they've got Mitzvah, not allowed Machne Yisrael. The Gemara is going to discuss at great length one pasuk in Parshas Nosei. The pasuk in Parshas Nosei says that HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe Rabbeinu that you have to send out of the camp. Who do you have to send out of the camp? All people who are tummy. And what he does is, he says all three categories. Tzavades b'nei Yisrael v'yishalchu min ha'machane kol tzavua, all people are Matzayah. V'chol zov, all those who are Zavos, v'chol tamei nefesh, and all people are tamei nefesh. Anybody have a question on that pasuk?
They don't all have to go.
Well, it depends which camp he was talking about.
Do not mean.
Which one was he talking about?
Not mean totally.
Yeah.
Must do, because if you meant so.
Yes, it means totally. Yeah, that's a good question. I wasn't thinking of that question. You're right. That is a good question. The more also discusses that. You hear Tony's question, but there's one more obvious question, I thought. Now, which camp is he saying? If he's talking about Machne Yisrael, so then you could say, good, send out the tzorah. You can't say to the Zov, you're not allowed to Machne Yisrael. He is allowed to Machne Yisrael. If you're talking about Machne Shechina, the tzorah is not even allowed to go anywhere near that. Okay. Now, the real question is that we just said there's three levels of tumah. If I wanted to tell you that you have to send people out of the camp, I should tell you the lightest. For example, I should tell you that Tmei Meis is not allowed in the camp. And if I tell you that Tmei Meis is not allowed to the camp, you'll then make a kavachayma the rest of them. Why do you have to say all three categories? Just say one, and we can deduce the others from them. Right? If I say there's three levels, right? Somebody who's £1 million in debt, some £2 million in debt, £3 million in debt. And I say anybody who's £1 million in debt, kicked out of the club. Kavachayma, somebody who's £3 million, you don't need to say that. That means I would say it's a very weak marshal, but that's the basic gist. The law is like this. Oh. Right. I must admit the all what I discussed just now starts the first Gemara. It takes time till the Gemara gets all into the kishkus of it. The first Gemara starts off with Ashkan Tomidu Pesach to Dochu Shabbos. We know that Kom Pesach and Tomid push away Shabbos. To Dochu Tumah Minano. So, for example, if most of Klal Yisrael are Tomei, we are allowed to bring the Korban Pesach, right? You're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach if most of Klal Yisrael are Tomei. How do we know that? Shabbos, just like we learn Pesach from Tomid Gabi Shabbos. That what? That just like Tomid is Deicha Shabbos, Pesach is Deicha Shabbos. Ochanami Yalef Tomid Pesach. We do the other way around. We learn Tomid for Pesach, Din and Tumah. That means from Korban Tomid we learn that Pesach is Deicha Shabbos, and from Korban Pesach we learn that Tomid is Deicha Tumah. Or Pesach Gufa Minolo. How do we know that Korban Pesach is Deicha Tumah? That means how do we know that if Voivo Klal Yisrael are Tomei? How do we know that you're allowed to bring the Korban Pesach? The pasuk says, if a man is Tomei, what should he do? What's the pasuk say? A person is Tomei by the Korban Pesach, what should he do? Everybody's a bit tired tonight. If a man is Tomei by Korban Pesach, what does he do? Pesach Sheni. Oh, So the Pasuk says, ish, if a man, ish is Lashon Yochid or Lashon Rabbi. Yochid. So if a single individual person is Tomei by Pesach Rishon, what should he do? Go to Pesach Sheni. So we should ish nitchel Pesach Sheni. Each individual person is pushed to Pesach Sheni. Vein sibur nitchel Pesach Sheni lovdi betumo. That means the Pasuk says like this. Some would say to you, how do you know that if a roived sibur or Tomei, we push it off to Pesach Sheni? The answer, sorry, don't push it off to Pesach Sheni. We don't push it, we do it betumah. Oh, I should say mistakes, wake people up. Again, how do we know that most of Kaisel or Tomei we do call on Pesach? The answer is because the Pasuk says, if one person is Tomei, push him off to Pesach Sheni. Only if one person is Tomei, push off to Pesach Sheni.
Sometimes you put the Kaisel.
No, I don't remember anywhere it says ish. That's the question. Adam ki yom spoil. Atam kuim Adam. But ish is anoshim. Adam doesn't come in the plural. There's such thing as Adomim, Adomos, etc. Ish, you've got anoshim. I hear what you say. But again, the Torah says if an individual person is told by Pesach Rishon, push him off to Pesach Sheni. Why is the Torah need to say ish? Tell me why is it possible to say individual? To tell you only individual. But if it's a tzibur, you don't push him off. If it's a tzibur, we bring a Korban Pesach straight away. You're wrong. You can't prove from that pasuk. Again, how could you read the pasuk differently? The pasuk says, what's the pasuk say? If there's an individual person, push him off to Pesach Sheni. But if it's a tzibur, what should you do? Do it. Or don't do it at all. Not Pesach Rishon, not Pesach Sheni. Rishlokish says to Rabbi Yehuda, you can't be medayik the pasuk. You can't deduce it from the pasuk. If you don't get this clear, the next one is going to be even harder. Again, the pasuk says if an individual person is Tomei, push it off to Pesach Sheni. But if the tzibur is Tomei, what should you do? Either do it, or maybe do it straight away, or maybe never do it. The individual has to do Pesach Sheni, but the tzibur, move with tzibur.
Why can't the tzibur do Pesach Sheni?
Why? No, maybe they're part completely. Individual, if you can't do Pesach Sheni, do Pesach Sheni. If the word is tzibur and Tomei, forget it, give up. That's another way to read the pasuk. You've got no raya from the words of the pasuk. If I say to you like this, if this individual person gets stuck in traffic, you do this. It doesn't tell you what happens if public people do it. You could either they can do it straight away, or they can never do it.
How would you just say that people do one man and then the people are coming?
We don't say that. We don't say that. The question is because we learned from the Torah not like that. On the contrary, we learned that we do bring the Korban Pesach. There are many tshuvas written why we don't bring Korban Pesach nowadays. Because the fact that we're all Tomei, it doesn't matter. We can bring Korban Pesach even betumah. You don't need the Beis Hamikdash Korban Pesach. It's the only Korban you don't need the Beis. What? You need the Mizbeach. You don't need the Beis Hamikdash. You just need the Mizbeach.
Everyone is.
Even if everyone. So again, the pasuk says, "Omar b'yichd, Omar k'as far as I know, ish ki yatomim nefesh, ish nit chabetz Hashem." Oh, Omar b'shlem b'shum no k'shav b'yichd. Aim ish nit chabetz
The problem is that we don't know where the mizbeach is going to be.
Yes, that's
we need to know
that we don't know. We don't know where to place the mizbeach. If we were to know where to put it, again. Omar b'shum no k'shav b'yichd. Aim ish nit chabetz Hashem. Tzibu lestu takanta loy b'pesach Rishon b'pesach Sheni. That means maybe you should learn a different version. That like this. You said that the individual gets pushed off to Pesach Sheni, and that tzibur can do it straight away. Maybe not. Maybe the individual gets pushed off to Pesach Sheni, and the tzibur can never do it. A new pasuk. Says the Gemara, the Torah should just say, send out of the camp some Jews that Tmei Meis, as we said, is the least of all tumas. And don't tell me about Zovam and Mitzvah. And I will say to myself, if you have to kick out the camp, people to Mesim, Zovam and Mitzvah, Elo Sabachsan Modal, top of the page. Yesh the Choshosh, Zovam and Mitzvah, Mishtalchin, ain't Mesim Mishtalchin. Meaning, the Torah wants to teach that no, there's a time when the Tmei Meis is not sent out the camp, and only it's Mizav and Mitzvah sent out the camp. Meaning like this: had the Torah only told you send out a Tmei Meis, and from there you would learn a Kal V'Chomer. If a Tmei Meis has to go out to the camp, Kal V'Chomer Zav and Mitzvah. So you would say whenever a Tmei Meis goes out of the camp, so does a Zav and Mitzvah have to go out of the camp, and you would never know there's any difference. Says the Torah, I'm going to tell you each one separately to tell you that there's a difference between them. Sometimes, indeed, the Zav Mitzvah needs to be sent out of the camp, but not a Tmei Meis, and that's why I separate them. So again, it comes out like this. We've got over here the pasuk which tells us 3 different categories of people they sent out to the camp. And the question is, why do you have to have all 3 categories? And the Gemara answers to tell you there's a sometimes need one, not the other. What's the question on this? Could anybody want to tell me a good question on this? Again, use a very, very simple example. You've got 3 different people. One owes $1 million, one owes $2 million, one's $3 million. You say, one who owes $1 million should be kicked out of the club, right? So then he owes £1 million. So you don't need to tell me that the 2 million and 3 million bankrupt people need to be sent out of the camp. Says the Gemara, must be to teach you that sometimes one, not the other. Hate the Gemara? No, I want to do 3 more lines and we'll stop. If that's the case, only tell me 2. You don't need to tell me 3. That means the pasuk should tell me Tmei Meis and Zob, or Tmei Meis and Mitzvah. You don't need to tell me all 3 categories. Just tell me, kick out the 1 million and the 2 million.
The other 2 always go hand in hand.
Yes, that's right. Zob and Mitzvah always go hand in hand. Just mention Zob and Tmei Meis and Mitzvah, and Yomi, Zob Mishtalech Mitzvah Lekoshke. So it must be, says Rabbi, that you'd come out like you were suggesting that they don't go hand in hand. Says Rabbi, that's not true. You would say such a thing that sometimes they don't go hand in hand, and we will only send out some of the people, some Zovim, not Mitzvah, Bechite Mochinami, or Tanan. We're going to stop over here. Abaya says that the 2 and 3, they do go hand in hand. We never split them up between. And if that's the case, if the reason why the Torah is split up into 3 groups was just to tell you that this group is different from that group, because sometimes this is sent and that's not, then the Torah will not need to tell me 3 groups, it just needs to tell me 2 groups. So that Abaya to Mishlokish, your whole drash is incorrect. So we're back to square one. How do we know that Korban Tomid, you do it even B'tumah? How do we know Korban Tomid? Who remembers? No. There's Shava Moyadir to Pesach, you're right. There's Shava Moyadir of Tomid to Pesach. How do we know that Pesach is Derech HaTumah? We don't know. Rabbi Yechon suggested Ish they excluded Sibul. But Bishlokish said to him that Sibul, maybe they never do it. Bishlokish suggested for the fact that the Torah says 3 categories, and they could have just said 1, I could have introduced the other 2. And therefore it tells you that they don't go hand in hand. Says Rabbi, if that's the whole case, then you don't need to tell me 3 categories, just tell me 2 categories that I know it. The fact that there says 3 categories, obviously the Torah is not going to teach that altogether. So we're up to Elom Rabbi, which is 8 lines, and tomorrow we really need to have, I think, caps off. I don't know if I should say that before we start. Long daf. Okay. Shkech. Oh, what? Right. Shkech for the. Look, can you imagine giving up your job because somebody knows 1 halacha more than you? Nah, we couldn't do it. I know. What? Why 2? No, if you got the halacha of the knife, which other halacha? No, just 1 halacha. Nice. Just a knife. Yeah.